Are you able to hear me? Okay, so we will start the class today. We will start with um, common bacterial infections of the skin. So basically the bacterial infection of the skin has been divided into two parts. First is the common bacterial infections, and second part is specifically regarding your mycobacterial infections. I think most of you have joined the class. Okay, and after completion of this lecture we will I will share you the PowerPoint with you, so that you can go through the various slides and revise the topic, and it will help you in reading through your books. So basically bacterial infection of the skin are mostly caused by our commensal skin bacteria. Okay, so skin, as we have already discussed in previous classes, acts as a barrier function, and it provides us a barrier or a immunity from exogenous infections which are present in our environment and which are commensal over our skin. Now wherever there is a breach in the skin mucosa, the exogenous infection will go into the wound and cause various cutaneous manifestations. So first we have to see that how these bacterial infections are happening. Now here we can see there are three different layers of the skin. First is the epidermis, then the dermis, and the subcutaneous tissue. And appendages of skin are hair follicles and your glands like sebaceous glands and apocrine glands. So most importantly we should see that which part of the skin are affected by various bacteria. So most common bacteria are Staphylococcus and Streptococcus. So we see here that Staphylococcus is mostly affecting the upper part and deeper part also. So deeper part is caused mostly from Streptococcus and Staphylococcus infection. Now the most common infections which are happening in your skin are like impetigo, which is present superficially, then boils, folliculitis, then deeper infections like cellulitis, ecthyma, erysipelas, and necrotizing fasciitis. So this is a broad overview which of the layers are involved in different kind of scenario. Now we will discuss each and every disease in details, so no need to worry about the names of the disease. We will discuss the name of the disease, the causative organism, and its various clinical manifestations and management. So most common commensal bacteria of our skin is Staphylococcus. Now Staph aureus, Staphylococcus aureus is, we all know, is a clustered cocci. Okay, so it's a gram-positive organism, and most commonly it causes infections like impetigo, ecthyma, folliculitis, furunculosis, carbuncle, and psychosis. We will discuss the name of the infection, don't worry. Now some of the effects are due to directly inoculation of the bacteria into the skin, and some of the effects are due to the toxins produced by the skin, as you all have studied in microbiology, that is Staphylococcus scalded skin syndrome and toxic shock syndrome. So Staphylococcus scalded skin syndrome is SSSS or toxic shock syndrome. They are nothing but infections caused by the toxin produced by the bacteria. Okay, so there are usually exotoxin and endotoxin. So in cases of these conditions, usually the endotoxins which are produced are causing this kind of manifestations. Now secondly is Streptococcus, strepto or chain like. Streptococci again is a very important gram-positive commensal bacteria, and we all know, most importantly, methicillin resistant Streptococcus infection is one of the common causes of your secondary infections in skin, and along with it causes streptococcal heart disease, that is rheumatic heart disease or rheumatoid arthritis, other kind of conditions are usually manifested by streptococcal infection. So if somebody has having streptococcal infection and later on is developing rheumatic heart disease, we strongly suspect streptococcus infections. We will discuss type of the streptococcus and all that in later. So it again causes impetigo, ecthyma, cellulitis, and then streptococcal infections, necrotizing fasciitis, and also it may also infect pre-existing infections, like suppose somebody is having some fungal infection, secondary streptococcal infection can occur over the pre-existing infection. Okay, so we have discussed about main bacteria, that is Staphylococcus and Streptococcus. Now a few details like what are the toxins. So toxins which are produced by this bacteria are usually endotoxin and exotoxins, and they usually cause toxic shock syndrome, Staphylococcus scarlet skin syndrome, and there are some hypersensitivity like erythema nodosum, which is basically due to tuberculous bacteria. Along with it, vasculitis and erythema multiforme. This kind of also lesions can also occur due to antigenic response to the streptococci or staphylococci which is present over the skin. Now we have to remember most of these kind of responses are usually seen against streptococcal infection and rarely against staphylococcal infection. So going into the detail, impetigo. Impetigo is acute contagious skin infestation mostly caused by Staph aureus and streptococcal infection. So impetigo is a bullous lesion, is a superficial lesion basically of the skin caused by Staph and Streptococcus. So how will we differentiate? There are two types. First is non-bullous, there will be no bulla formation. So we all know stratum corneum, we can see here. See here, see this is a bullous impetigo. So bullous impetigo, there is superficial infection over the stratum corneum only, so there is a thin walled bulla formation is there. So impetigo is basically a superficial infection, either it can be bullous or non-bullous. Now bullous impetigo are caused by staphylococcal infection. Usually staphylococcal toxin is very superficial and it causes lysis of the stratum corneum, causing a purulent dewdrop like appearance, okay, or honey drop like appearance. When you drop honey over a surface, it will look like that, have a glistening yellowish purulent kind of appearance. So the bullous impetigo is most commonly caused by staphylococcus, whereas non-bullous impetigo is caused by group based streptococcus. Now most commonly you have to understand that it is not a fixed criteria that bullous will be caused by staphylococcus and non-bullous will be caused by only streptococcus, but usually it is seen that bullous impetigo is most commonly caused by staphylococcus infection, whereas in case of non-bullous impetigo, mixed infections are more common, mostly by streptococcus aureus. Now any bullous impetigo, because of the bulla is very thin, it may rupture, again it may form a non-bullous impetigo. So things are over relating, and we have to just know that if bullous impetigo is present, mostly it is Staph aureus. Non-bullous is present, both Staph aureus and Streptococcus aureus can be present. Now this impetigo is nothing but infection of the superficial layer of the skin. So wherever there is abrasion or discontinuity of superficial layer of the skin, like in cases of some eczema, some burn, scabies, pediculosis, some fungal infection, again secondary infection can occur over the lesions, giving rise to impetigo. And mostly in pediatric age group it is seen because of the low hygiene. Mostly the children will be playing on the ground, they will be touching all kind of infected materials like shoes and whatever things which are lying on the floor. Even many children will be playing in dirt, so from there they get this superficial infections which happens over the abraded part of the skin or denuded part of the skin. And regarding non-bullous impetigo, most important, the definition of non-bullous impetigo is a thin-walled crusted lesion present over the exposed part, like on the face, on the neck, maybe over the hands, mostly over the face, and have a exudative layer over it. So exudate is nothing but is a pus mixed with blood, serum, and the dirt particles. So when it dries up, it forms a honey colored crust. Okay, and it usually heals without scarring. Because why it will heal without scarring? Because it is only affecting the superficial epidermis, not the deeper part. And in cases of severe infection, suppose impetigo is present quite extensive. See, in this child, the impetigo is quite extensive. It is affecting a large part of the face. So it may affect the local lymph node. Okay, so local lymphadenitis can also be present, and along with it secondary systemic infections like signs of infection like fever and swelling of the face and swelling of the organ can also be present. So impetigo is mostly a superficial infection affecting the stratum corneum. It can be of bullous or non-bullous type. Non-bullous impetigo is mostly caused by staph and strepto both. There will be crusting of the lesions, there will be discharge, seropurulent discharge, which may dry and form a crusted lesion. Okay. Now second thing is, important part is post-streptococcal AGN. So you have read in pathology, streptococcal glomerulonephritis or acute glomerulonephritis usually follows after streptococcal throat infection and streptococcal skin infection, and most common organism in this case is Streptococcus pyogenes. Okay, so Streptococcus pyogenes infection causes acute glomerulonephritis. So basically AGN is not directly due to infection by Streptococcus pyogenes. It is a hypersensitive reaction because the glomerular basement membrane has a cross sensitivity to Streptococcus antigen, which is present in your body either after throat infection or other skin infection. Now we see some varieties of non-bullous impetigo. First is the sarcinet. See, circular like lesions. The sarcinet infection is basically due to peripheral extension of the healing lesions healing in the center. So this lesion may mimic like tinea infection or any other eczema. So we have to be very careful when we are making a diagnosis. So sarcinet impetigo, central healing with peripheral extension, as same as fungal infection of the skin. Then there is crusted impetigo. Crusted impetigo is nothing but is an infection of the hair follicles, and sometimes it may be present wherever the patient or child is having, suppose the child is having tinea capitis. Okay, so there is a lesion, crusting is there, the hair has been not washed for a long duration, or some pediculosis due to recurrent bite by the mite. We have the louse, as we have seen in previous classes. So there is local abrasion of the skin, and again infection of the superficial layer of the skin, leading rise to crusted impetigo over the skin. So in these cases, occipital lymph nodes will be enlarged and tender. There will be infection, discharge, crusting present over the scalp. Now when sometimes what happens, impetigo is usually superficial, but sometimes as it is an infective condition, it may go deep also, as there is no clear-cut demarcation. So when it is going deep, it may cause adherent crust and irregular ulcerations may occur. Now when it is going deep below the epidermis, it will cause healing with scarring. So whenever the lesions are below epidermis, it is going into dermis, healing with scarring will be there. So alternative impetigo is also known as ecthyma, or it may causes ecthyma gangrenosum. See here this lesion, how it is affecting the deeper part. See here how it is affecting the deeper part. Okay. Now as we have already discussed regarding bullous impetigo, it gives a dew drop, honey drop like appearance. See how golden yellow colored pus is there, thin walled blister is there. Okay, but still it is fluid filled because it is not ruptured due to friction, and mostly it is seen in neonates, because see, in adults, in older children, what will happen, even the crusting is there, the child will touch it, so it will rupture, so these bullous lesions will not be seen. But in neonates what happens, if the neonate is not aware of the condition, so they will not touch the lesion, and usually they remains intact. Okay, and phase is usually common in neonates but may occur on any part of the body. So here we can see, and after rupture it may crust, and 3 in 1 again same thing, crusted wall lesions may be found. Now treatment of impetigo, mostly it is the predisposing conditions like pediculosis or staphylococcus if present has to be treated. Then we have to wash the part regularly, proper cleaning of the part and removal of the crust either using olive oil, hydrogen peroxide. Okay, the crust has to be removed. Topical antibiotics like tetracycline, bacitracin, mitomycin, fusidic acid and mucosine. These topical antibiotics basically covering the gram positive and sometimes gram negative spectrum has to be given, along with oral antibiotics like oral antibiotics in form of amoxicillin, cloxacillin, erythromycin, azithromycin, and erythromycin resistant Staph aureus patient may be given amoxicillin plus clavulanic acid or augmentin in form of 20 mg per kg day. Basically you are using broad spectrum antibiotics. Okay, and the antibiotics has to be given for at least 5 days. Okay, in pediatric age group at least 5 days you should give topical antibiotics. You should give antibacterial washes like we can use betadine, that is povidone iodine washes, to decrease the bacterial load, along with proper maintaining of the hygiene and proper washing of hairs, because hairs are also a source of infection. So proper washing of hairs will prevent occurrence of these lesions over the face again. Okay. Now we have discussed superficial infection. We go a little bit deep, that is folliculitis. If you have any doubts regarding impetigo, you can ask the question. Okay, I think I will take one more class regarding cutaneous tuberculosis. If you have any doubts on impetigo, you can ask. Okay, so we go into next topic, that is folliculitis. Okay, folliculitis is nothing but inflammation of the hair follicle. Folliculitis, that is folliculitis, inflammation. Now this inflammation can be infective cause and non-infective cause. As we all know, inflammation can be either infective or non-infective. So most common is superficial folliculitis, also known as Bouchard's impetigo. Why Bouchard's impetigo? Just see. As similar as bullous impetigo but smaller in size and usually affecting the hair follicle. So Bouchard's impetigo are a dome-shaped pustule at the orifice of hair follicle that it will usually heal with 7 to 10 days, and it is caused by Staph aureus. Okay, so Staphylococcus aureus is most common cause. So disseminated multiple fluid-filled or raised lesions will be present basically over the hair follicles. So we call is a disseminated folliculitis. Okay. Now mostly it is seen in patients who are hairy, they have more body hair or large body hair, they work in hot environment like factory workers, blast furnace workers, those people who are working outside like laborers, and those people who are working in hot weather. So these are all caused by Staphylococcus, and topical steroids are common predisposing factors. Yes, many people nowadays they use topical steroid preparations for a number of causes, maybe for fairness of the face, maybe for some other conditions, even for tinea infection people are using topical steroids. So in that cases the steroid, what it will do, it will suppress the microbiota of the skin, and it will allow the opportunistic infection like Staph aureus to grow rapidly, giving rise to this papular or acneiform eruption. Okay, this is basically a acneiform eruption. It looks like acne, but it is not acne, it is basically a folliculitis. So this follicular lesions, folliculitis present this over a large area and over the hairy parts of the body. Now second condition is psychosis vulgaris. Now psychosis vulgaris is basically, why it is called as psychosis vulgaris or psychosis barbae, because it simulates psychosis or fungal infection of the hair. Okay, so fungal infection of the hair is known as psychosis. So it looks like a fungal infection of the moustache, but it is not. So recurrent red follicular papules present over the hair, and it produces crusting, plaque, pustules, multiple discharging lesions, giving rise to that we can say fungal infection of the hair or the moustache, the appearance is something like that. Now the differential factors of psychosis barbae is obviously tinea barbae, that is fungal infection of the moustache, or beard, and also pseudofolliculitis. Pseudofolliculitis, as we will discuss later. So it is basically caused by Staphylococcus aureus. It is affecting the hair follicles, root of the hair follicles are affected. Okay, so this is was about psychosis bar. Now next topic we have is pseudofolliculitis. Now as we know, folliculitis is caused by bacterial infection, either Staphylococcus aureus or Streptococcus aureus. Now pseudofolliculitis is folliculitis without any infection. Now how this is happening? It is happening due to penetration of the sharp tip of the shaved hairs into deeper part of the skin. So this is one of the conditions where permanent hair removal, see how it is happening. Hair is little bit cut, then it curves and re-entered into the epidermis, and when it re-enters into the epidermis, the keratin causes an inflammatory response, giving rise to pseudofolliculitis. So pseudofolliculitis, basically the most important treatment is trimming of the beard. We should keep beard a little bit long. We should not shave it very closely, otherwise the hair will come out and again go into the skin. Apart from it, we can use topical steroids combined with topical antibiotics to prevent inflammation and to prevent any further infection. And most importantly, if the condition is non-responsive to any treatment, the most important treatment is permanent hair removal with laser. That will cure the condition permanently. Now furunculosis. Now many people will ask, what is the difference between furuncle and folliculitis? Now folliculitis is inflammation of the hair follicle. The furunculosis is infection of the hair follicles and around the surrounding appendages. So in cases of folliculitis, only hair follicle is affected, whereas in cases of furuncle, hair follicle and nearby tissue will also be affected. So it is a extended form of folliculitis with little bit skin infection around the hair follicle. And what happens when many follicles will combine together, they will give rise to a carbuncle. Okay, carbuncle is nothing but it is jewel. Okay, carbuncle is jewel or cluster of jewel like appearance. So it gives rise to a, suppose multiple lesions are present here, it will give rise to carbuncle. And usually where this kind of lesions will be seen in the exposed part, in the flexures, like over the flexural part of the neck, over the flexural part of the arm, over immunocompromised patients, over hairy part of the skin. Obviously it will not never present over the palms and soles, because folliculitis is an infection of the hair follicle, so it will not affect the palms and the soles, but definitely they will affect the hairy part, that is back, that is chest, over the face also, hands also, neck also, leg also. So we have to know the difference between folliculitis and furuncle. Folliculitis is inflammation of the hair follicle, furuncle is infection of the hair follicle and around with the surrounding tissue, and carbuncle is multiple clustered furuncles when they are present grouped together form the carbuncle. Now we have discussed about the superficial infection, that was impetigo, bullous, non-bullous, then appendages, that is folliculitis, furuncle, and obviously psychosis Barroway. Now we go to the deeper part of the skin. The most important infection of deeper part of the skin is erysipelas and cellulitis. So erysipelas is infection of the limited infection of the dermis. Okay, in case of the cellulitis, the infection is going into subcutaneous tissue also. So we cannot see the infection specifically on the dermis always. It may be in the subcutaneous tissue and it is trying to come out. Whereas in cases of erysipelas, it is basically in the upper cutaneous tissue and the dermis by group A streptococci. Now you see in these cases there will be erythema, okay, swelling and pain over the part of the skin. Okay, so in erysipelas, superficial as well as deep layers are also involved. Now in erysipelas, what is the important factor? Blistering and hemorrhage. Why this blistering and hemorrhage is happening in erysipelas? Blistering is basically involvement of the superficial layer. Now there is superficial layer of the skin and deeper layer of the skin are separated. So what happens? The dermal plexus of the blood vessels are exposed. So if there is blistering alteration, there will be copious bleeding in cases of erysipelas. Along with it, lymphangitis and regional lymphadenopathy will always be there because of the lymphatic spread of the infection to the lymph node. Here we can see again erysipelas. Now the difference between cellulitis and erysipelas is, in erysipelas the lesion margin is well demarcated. Here we can see Whereas cellulitis, because of the involvement of the deeper layer of the skin, the margin is not very clear. Whereas we can see here erysipelas. So erysipelas is a little bit superficial, and whereas in cases of cellulitis, the lesion is very more deeper or involving the subcutaneous tissue. Now all we know recurrences complication is rapid spread. All this kind of superficial as well as deeper skin infections can always give rise to disseminated infection of the skin of the regional organ, and also it may give rise to bacteremia, that is infection of the blood vessels. It may give rise to septicemia, and patient may land up in septic shock. Apart from it, obviously antigenic reaction to the antigen, that is nephrotic syndrome or rheumatic heart disease, can also be occurring due to primary infection with streptococcus or staphylococcus. Okay, so treatment antibiotics, again treatment will usually be at par with what were happening in the previous types. We will start with amoxicillin group, that is 625 mg twice daily, cephalosporin, broad spectrum antibiotics, and rest, analgesics, and local drainage if any pus or abscess formation is there is advised in these cases. So conservative management is the best management in cases of systemic antibiotic infections. Now we have discussed about skin diseases caused by staphylococcus and streptococcus. If you have any questions, kindly ask. If you have any doubts, kindly ask. Over the streptococcus and staphylococcus infection. Now what we do a revision. Okay, so streptococcal infection, staphylococcal infection, superficial are like impetigo, then folliculitis. Okay, deeper infections we go, that is psychosis parvae, that is deeper folliculitis, eczema, and deeper infections include erysipelas and cellulitis. Staphylococcus infections mostly causes bullous impetigo. Non-staphylococcus infection is causing non-bullous impetigo. Okay, which is caused usually by both streptococcus and staphylococcus. Impetigo and eczema, all these conditions usually are self-limiting. Topical antibiotics, some local antibiotics are enough for treatment. Oral antibiotics has to be given if regional lymphadenopathy or any systemic symptoms are there. Then going to the deeper infections, folliculitis or infection of the hair follicle is most common, and apart from it you have furuncle, that is of hair follicle and the surrounding tissue. Okay, so furuncle is there, and treatment will be almost the same. Cleaning of the lesion, crusting of the lesion has to be clean, oral antibiotics has to be given. Then third condition is erysipelas and cellulitis. Erysipelas is superficial, somewhat superficial, that is dermal cellulitis, and whereas if subcutaneous tissue is involved, that is known as deeper cellulitis. Now erysipelas will have clear-cut margin, usually caused by streptococcus infection. Pain, inflammation, swelling will be there. In cases of deeper cellulitis, pain, inflammation, and swelling will be more severe. Patient will have more severe symptoms, and it may disseminate into septicemia, and it may also change into gangrene. Treatment of all these conditions, usually you have to give a gram-positive or broad-spectrum antibiotic, usually dicloxacillin, erythromycin, azithromycin, or most importantly amoxicillin and cephalosporin group of antibiotics. Topically bacitracin, fusidic acid, mupirocin, and neomycin, pramycetin. All these antibiotics can be used. Apart from it, antiseptic washes like betadine washes, providone iodine, proper washing with removal of the crusting lesions by hydrogen peroxide and olive oil is usually advised in all these cases. Okay, so we have discussed about strepto and staphylococcus infection. Now we will have discussion on Corynebacteria. We all know Corynebacterium is one of the common commensal in our body. So most common Corynebacterium infection in our body is erythrasma. Okay, erythrasma is mild chronic superficial. Okay. Okay, first thing we have to understand, hardly it will be symptomatic. In most of the cases, the infection is only limited to the stratum corneum, and being a dead tissue, hardly any inflammatory response will be present. So you might see a lesion over the skin, it might not be symptomatic, as in cases of fungal infection, where the symptomatic disease is less common. So it will be mildly symptomatic, usually pruritus and all that will be present. And the most important feature is that it is clinically well demarcated. Okay, you see this lesion, erythrasma, the lesion is well demarcated. Okay, now important point about your Corynebacterium infection is, usually it is confined to the which parts, is to the intertriginous parts. So in the axilla, in the groin, buttocks, all these regions will be inframammary area. So all folding skin parts will be the most commonly involved, and any topical antibiotics applied to these infections can heal it easily, because it is very superficial. Now the diagnosis of erythrasma, characteristic one thing we have to remember, under Woods lamp examination, that is 365 nanometer ultraviolet light. So under this UV light, what will happen, the erythrasma will give a coral red fluorescence. Okay, what is happening, that is coral red, or you see in this condition, coral red is something I'll show you in the clinical classes. It will have pinkish like appearance. Okay, dark pinkish like appearance when you see the erythrasma under Woods lamp. So the activity of disease can be monitored by Woods lamp. Suppose we have started the treatment and patient is fully cured. When we see it under coral fluorescence, that is UV light, 365 nanometer Woods light, the coral red fluorescence will be present. If coral red fluorescence is not present, that means Corynebacterium is dead or not actively dividing. Now the most important treatment, all Corynebacterium as well and antifungals should be given in these cases, because of the gram-negative condition of that area. Apart from it, erythromycin group of antibiotics, that is azithromycin, erythromycin, can be given orally. Apart from it, you can also give tetracycline group like doxycycline, minocycline. Also all this, because Corynebacterium acne is one of the most common commensal organism in our body. So again, tetracycline group of antibiotics will work same in features of the acne infection, that is caused by Corynebacterium acne. Whereas in this case of Corynebacterium minusetum infection, the treatment of choice will be mostly in form of erythromycin or azithromycin tablets. Okay, so we have discussed about two major bacterial infections, that is staphylococcal and streptococcal infections, and second is the Corynebacterium infections. Okay, so Corynebacterium infections, there are many other infections which are caused by Corynebacteria. Okay, skin infections caused by Corynebacteria. So I give you a task, you tell me what are the other skin infections which is caused by Corynebacteria. So in next class, what are the other skin infections caused by Corynebacteria. So this is your task. What are the other skin infections? I think there is some issue with spelling because of the typing grammar. So anyway, what are the other skin infections caused by Corynebacterium? I have given already a hint. Acne is caused by Corynebacterium acne, and your erythrasma is caused by Corynebacterium minusetum. Now other skin infections caused by Corynebacteria, you can easily go through your textbook or go through your internet and give me a total feedback. What are the other infections can occur due to Corynebacteria? Okay, so any doubts you have regarding all these topics? Okay, very good. Somebody has replied trichomycosis axillaris. Okay, trichomycosis axillaris. Now tricho trichomycosis is, they are telling is a fungal infection, but actually trichomycosis is not a mycosis. It is a tricho means hair. Okay, this is a bacterial infection of the hair. Now trichomycosis axillaris can be of two type, okay, white and black. So you tell me what is the cause of white trichomycosis, black trichomycosis. You better read it and comment. Okay, and if you have any doubts regarding the corynebacterial infection, regarding the streptococcal and staphylococcal infections, you can ask. Okay, I think there are no doubts are there, or I think you have not read the topic. So I will suggest you will go and read the topic at your home. When you are well versed with the topic, you can ask the questions. From next classes onwards, we will start devising some interesting quizzes for you, so that you can give answer and judge your knowledge. Okay. Now regarding the cutaneous tuberculosis. Okay. Now cutaneous tuberculosis is somewhat rare, even with so much prevalence of pulmonary tuberculosis in Indian population. Because of the reason is simple: skin acts as a very wonderful barrier due to all this your cutaneous sebum discharge. Then, as we know, immunogenic properties of skin, then immunogenic properties of the our immune system. The cutaneous tuberculosis is usually rare in our country, but being a very big country and very high load of pulmonary tuberculosis, still the prevalence of cutaneous tuberculosis is more in India in compared to any other country in the world. Okay, now cutaneous tuberculosis is mostly caused by different strain of bacteria, or mycobacteria specifically said, that is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, the MTB, the causative agent of pulmonary tuberculosis. Apart from it, bovine species or non-primate species like Mycobacterium bovis and even BCG vaccination, okay, can give rise to a tuberculin reaction at the site of inoculation. Okay, most of you have seen that there is somewhat induration present over the children after BCG vaccination. It is nothing but a antigenic response of our body towards the BCG BCG vaccine, giving rise to a reactive pattern or the nodule formation. Okay, now cutaneous tuberculosis, most common cause of form of cutaneous tuberculosis in adult is lupus vulgaris. We will discuss about the names in detail. And in pediatric age group, it is scrophulodema. So these are MCQ questions. In adult, if they ask what is the most common cause, most common type of TB found in adults, you say lupus vulgaris. In TB found in children, you say scrophulodema or lichen scrofulosum. In cases of all population, including adult and children, again it is lupus vulgaris. So lupus vulgaris is very, very common in comparison to other type of tuberculosis. Sorry, cutaneous tuberculosis. Now, one thing we have to understand, cutaneous tuberculosis is very difficult to diagnose. Why? Because their manifestations are very heterogeneous. There is not common manifestation. Suppose somebody is having pulmonary tuberculosis, cough, cold, fever, then expectoration, blood in the sputum. These are usually common symptoms. So we strongly suspect it is a case of tuberculosis. But in cases of cutaneous tuberculosis, it presents in so varied form, it is very difficult to identify the condition first. Second thing is, even if you identify, it is very difficult to diagnose. Only diagnosis is by biopsy, because there is no sputum discharge, there is no TB bacteria in blood. The only thing you can do is biopsy. Okay, now seeing the different type of cutaneous tuberculosis, it is first is the route of infection. Either route of infection is exogenous autoinoculation, endogenous autoinoculation, and secondary infection. So autoinoculation caused by exogenous source. Suppose somebody is going and handling some TB samples, okay, like in cases of prosector swat, or that is we can say anatomist swat, or we can say whoever is doing dissection of the corpse after death. If dissection is there, small pick is there, suppose you are doing dissection, you have cut the, or you are doing postmortem, you have cut the abdomen, you have taken out some tissue and suddenly get a prick. So if that person is harboring tuberculosis, that infection will go through the prick and it will form a local inoculation, which will not heal by giving topical antibiotics. So you have to start topical oral anti-tubercular treatment. So inoculation tuberculosis are three types: tuberculosis chancre, TBVC, tuberculosis vericoacutis. Why vericoacutis? It looks like what, but it is not what, caused by tuberculosis, and cutis, that is of skin. And lupus vulgaris. Lupus vulgaris, we have seen, lupus vulgaris can happen from exogenous infection. So histology will be usually specific for tuberculosis and the disease will be usually localized. It will not have a chest to chest, or we can say it is not having a transmission from one person to another person by aerosol. Now secondary tuberculosis is, here it was exogenous, or secondary tuberculosis is endogenous. Suppose somebody is having weak immune system and he is infected with tuberculosis. What will happen? That tuberculosis bacilli will rapidly start to multiply and it goes out of skin through what we call is continuous spread. So that one of the condition is very common is scrofloderma, that is caused by continuous spread. You are tuberculosis positive, you are working in some hospital, you have given to them, it is scrofloderma. Apart from it, autoinoculation. Autoinoculation is nothing but you get a prick, the bacteria is inoculated into your skin. From here the skin starts seeing a small little lesions which slowly grows in size and becomes a tubercular lesion. So the lesions are very difficult to diagnose. Until unless you have seen a lesion, you will not be able to diagnose. And third is hematogenous. Obviously, miliary tuberculosis, somebody is having low immune status. Whole dissemination of the TB bacilli blood to skin give rise to hematogenous tuberculosis. And biopsy will always be same because of the active organism present in their body. Now, some conditions are tuberculosis-like, but they don't have any TB antigen. As we all know, in cases of streptococcal infection, it was causing glomerulonephritis, not directly by affecting the kidney, but by the cross-reactivity of the antigen. What antigen? Your streptococcal antigen. Same in this manner, there will be cross-reactivity of the epidermis and the appendage tissue to the mycobacterial antigen, giving rise to papillary form of the organism. They contains lichen scrofulosum, papillary or papilloneurotic tuberculate, and nodular form is erythema induration of the basin. So here we see various types of cutaneous tuberculosis. Their spread, inoculation, chancre, vericoacutis, and lupus vulgaris. In homogeneous spread, acute miliary tuberculosis, lupus vulgaris, tubercular gumma, and secondary spread, local spread, it is by scrofloderma or facial tuberculosis. So we have a broad idea regarding the tubercular bacteria which is happening in our skin and how they are spreading and different type of varied manifestations of tuberculosis. So as with syphilis, we also can say cutaneous tuberculosis is a great mimicker. It is very difficult to identify that this condition is tubercular or bacterial or any other region allergic reaction until and unless we do a thorough examination using skin biopsy. That's why skin biopsy is a very valuable tool in dermatology, which helps in identifying the various conditions and differentiating one condition for other. Now talking about the various lesions in tuberculosis, I will talk about few conditions, that is lupus vulgaris most commonly. It is common skin lesion. So see here, lupus vulgaris is progressively growing. Okay, it's painful, progressively growing tubercular lesion, or it has a reddish brown nodule which will slowly enlarge and heal with crusting and scarring. So here, from here it will start, it will go upwards. So where it goes upwards, it will heal with crusting and scarring. Again we do diascopy. Diascopy is we press it with a glass slide, it will give rise to a apple jelly like nodule. So progressive lesion, healing with scarring, painful, not responding to antibiotics, and positive diascopy test, that is giving apple belly nodules on the healed part, the new part of the lesion clinches the diagnosis of lupus volgens. Then TB varicocutis, again same, varicole is like what? Then large lesions will be present which looks like what? And I have said I can do nothing, but we can just simply do the biopsy and confirm the diagnosis. Many times it will look like what, and many time people will do cautery. So cautery is not the solution for tuberculosis. It is just a diagnostic method. If you do cautery, again the infection will come out. So instead of doing cautery in this condition, we have to start anti-tuberculosis treatment. Then only it will respond. Okay. Now TBVC is also known as prosector SWOT or anatomist SWOT. Prosector means path who is doing post-mortem. So suppose somebody is having pulmonary tuberculosis, post-mortem has been done, the hand is infected or exposed to the TB bacilli, then there is some cut is there, some micro abrasion is there, it will go into the hand and it will form a warty lesion. Okay, so TBVC. Now diagnosis again skin biopsy and PPT test. Okay, mostly in cases tuberculin test will be positive. Then scrofloderma. Scrofloderma is nothing but condition caused by tubercular involvement of the skin and extension. So scrofloderma usually comes from within. See here, this is a case of pulmonary tuberculosis and it is causing infection of the upper part of the skin. The bacteria bacilli load is so much that it is coming out of the skin and including the skin and coming out. So there will be presence of exudate, there will be presence of discharge sinuses, reddish swelling will be there, but characteristically these lesions are not hot, so we call it as a cold abscess. Why it is not hot? Because severe inflammatory response is usually not present in cases of scrofloderma. It is basically a somewhat cold lesion. Okay, we call it as a cold discharge of cold nodule. Okay, now many people get confused with bacterial infection, bacterial abscess. The main difference is presence of underlying tuberculosis, then cold lesions, then regional lymphadenopathy involvement or regional lymph node involvement, and these things usually do not respond to regular antibiotics and topical antibiotics, only will respond to anti-tuberculosis. Okay. Now miliary tuberculosis or disseminated tuberculosis, it is rare form of tuberculosis where is dissemination. Here see, small multiple papules, dissemination, very difficult to identify. You will not be able to, and only after biopsy if you see some caseous necrosis, then only you make a presumptive diagnosis, and usually affects in children, immunocompromised patients, HIV infection. Okay. And very characteristic is that many minor bluish purple vesicles will be present, and the condition will usually have a hemorrhagic or erythematous nodules. So miliary tuberculosis is a very rare condition. It's not commonly seen in immunocompetent people. Now last but not least, two reaction is the tuberculosis. So let us see. Here we can see multiple lesions, red colored lesions specifically present over the skin, and follicular involvement is not clear cut. So tuberculosis is basically hypersensitivity reaction to MTB. Okay, and the patient will have significant immunity, and most importantly few criteria has to be full, because first thing is that the histopathology will resemble the histopathology of tuberculosis. Some cases necrosis, some granuloma should be there. Okay. Second thing, MTB should not be there. This is a tuberculid, tubercular like, not tuberculosis. Okay, so it is basically a hypersensitivity reaction to MTB. Third thing, if we treat underlying TB, this tuberculosis should also go. So somewhat similar to Koch hypothesis, should have the bacilli. For Koch hypothesis, should have the tuberculosis histopathology. Mycobacterium tuberculosis should not be present. It's a yield reaction. It is not a direct infection, it is a hypersensitivity reaction, so there should not be any mycobacteria. Then because of it is a hypersensitivity reaction, tuberculin test must be positive, because tuberculin test itself is a hypersensitivity reaction, so tuberculin test should be positive. And last but not least, treatment of any underlying TB will treat this tuberculosis also, not directly, but because the bacterial load will go down, so hypersensitivity reaction will go down. Okay, so we see two things: miliary tuberculosis where immunity is low, and tuberculosis where immunity is very high. Okay, just a immune response. Then last but not the least is lichen scrofulosum, and it is one of the most common cause of cutaneous TB in children. So they will be present with a tuberculous reaction, again tuberculous reaction, and it is present with multiple. See, these lesions are looking like lichen planus, lichen nidus, something like that. Here it is looking like disseminated lichen planus. So rare that is present in the lichenoid eruption, and lesions are usually asymptomatic. Okay, they don't have any itching or any problems. Okay, and yeah, they are usually present over abdomen, chest, back, and prominent part of the limbs. And same hypothesis will apply. Skin lesion must have tuberculoid histopathology. MTB should not be there. Tuberculin test should be positive, and treatment of TB will lead to healing of these lesions. Okay. Now diagnosis of cutaneous tuberculosis. You remember the most important and best diagnosis of cutaneous tuberculosis is skin biopsy, because cutaneous tuberculosis, apart from TB, VC and scrophaloderma, most of the lesions are so confusing, will get confused to the other type of skin conditions. So skin biopsy is very much advised. Apart from it, other test which can be done is RT-PCR obviously, then CB-NAT, cartridge based nucleic acid amplification test, then qualified gold assay, previously it was used, nowadays it is not used, X-ray of the chest, sputum culture, and tuberculin skin test, which gives a strong evidence of immunity against TB bacilli, are one of the few investigations which can be done to identify TB bacilli in our body. Treatment, most importantly, we have to start MDT, and the MDT is phase 2 MDT. They are not phase 1 MDT. MDT has to be started with phase 2 MDT for extrapulmonary cases. Okay, extrapulmonary MDT has to be given, and patient will usually respond to the initial phase of the therapy, initiation phase of the therapy, and continuation of the therapy can be done after initiation phase. Okay, now regarding the condition of cutaneous tuberculosis, any doubts you have, you can ask. Any doubts you have, you can ask regarding cutaneous tuberculosis. Okay, I'll give you the PowerPoint presentation to all of you, so that you can go through it, you can revise it, and we can also have one small quiz session for next time. I am preparing the quiz, so we'll start uploading from all these topics. Okay, and see, you have to understand that cutaneous bacterial infections are vast in number. What we have enumerated are not the end of the infections. Many other conditions are there, and we cannot go in depth, but mostly in your examination these kind of questions will be asked. Okay, so it's 1:05 already. I think this class was quite long. I will end with a query that if you have any doubts, you can either WhatsApp me or you can send now also, so that next time when you learn, when next week when we start discussing about another topics, if you have any doubts regarding this topic, you might get a clear perspective. Okay, so shall I end the class?